The Pride Before the Fall. In the obsidian depths of the Artaxian spaceport's most notorious drinking establishment, the Hunter's Rest, a crowd gathered around the imposing figure of Kravinx. His iridescent scales caught the dim light as he adjusted the array of trophy badges adorning his ceremonial vest. Each badge represented a successful hunt from a different sentient species, 47 in total, the highest count in the known galaxy. Another round for the greatest hunter in the quadrant, Belud Zekthar, a veteran hunter whose cybernetic eye whirred as it focused on Kravinx. The gathered hunters raised their glasses, though their expressions carried traces of concern rather than pure admiration. Kravinx's mandibles clicked in satisfaction as he surveyed the crowd. His latest trophy, the neural stem of a quantum beast from the Carina Nebula, pulsed with a soft blue light at his belt. The hunt had been challenging. 3 months of tracking through probability storms and quantum anomalies, but like every other prey he pursued, it had ultimately fallen to his superior hunting prowess. "I hear the Galactic Council has classified a new Death World species," Kravinx announced, his voice carrying the distinctive metallic resonance of the Scarix elite. "They call themselves humans." The reaction was immediate. Several hunters unconsciously touched their weapons, while others simply shook their heads. A meridian silk weaver in the corner actually began to pray. "Forget it," Kravinx warned Verlac, an ancient hunter whose crystalline exoskeleton bore the scars of countless hunts. "Humans aren't like your other trophies. They're not even like the quantum beasts. They're something else entirely." Kravinx's secondary heart pulsed with irritation. Something else. They're barely a Class II civilization. Their ships still used chemical propulsion for atmospheric exit. Their weapons are based on primitive projectile technology. What could possibly make them so special? Verlac leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more weight than a shout. 3 cycles ago, a Drenix war party. You know, the apex predators from the Carina Arm. They attempted to establish a hunting ground on a human colony world. You know what happened. "Enlighten me," Kravinx replied, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "The humans didn't just defeat them. They turned the hunters into the hunted. Used the environment against them. Set traps that even our most advanced sensors couldn't detect. And do you know what they called it?" Verlac paused for effect. "A training exercise." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Someone mentioned the Helix incident, where a single human ship had managed to evade an entire hunting fleet through an asteroid field, using maneuvers that should have torn their primitive vessel apart. But Kravinx wasn't listening. His mind was already racing with possibilities. Humans might be more challenging than he'd initially thought, but that only made them more worthy as prey. Besides, he had technology and experience that the Drenix could only dream of. "I've made my decision," he announced, standing to his full height of 3 meters. "I will hunt on their colony world of New Arcadia, and I will return with a human trophy for my collection." The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Zekthar spoke up. "At least take a full hunting party, even the Drenix." "No," Kravinx cut him off. "I hunt alone. Always have, always will." Besides, he added with a predatory grin, "What glory is there in overwhelming superior numbers? I want to prove that a single elite hunter can succeed where others have failed." As he strode out of the Hunter's Rest, Kravinx's neural implants were already downloading everything known about human physiology and behavior. Behind him, he heard the betting pool starting up. But unlike every other hunt, they weren't betting on how quickly he'd succeed. They were betting on whether he'd survive at all. Aboard his hunting vessel, the Shadow's Claw, Kravinx began his preparations. His ship's AI displayed holographic projections of human settlements, their defensive capabilities, and their daily routines. The more he studied, the more his confidence grew. Yes, humans had some impressive achievements for their technological level, but they were still primitive compared to the Scarix Empire. What he didn't realize, what none of his data could tell him, was that he was about to learn why the galaxy's most dangerous predators had unanimously decided to give humanity a wide berth, and why the term primitive when applied to humans was the deadliest misconception a hunter could make. First contact, last mistake. New Arcadia wasn't much to look at from orbit. A Class 3 mining colony with only 50,000 inhabitants, mostly concentrated around 3 major settlement hubs. Kravinx's ship's AI highlighted the largest settlement, New Adelaide, as he reviewed the tactical display. Atmospheric composition. Nitrogen-oxygen mix, slightly higher oxygen content than Galactic standard. Gravity, 1.1 standard. Temperature range, extreme seasonal variations. The AI's emotionless voice paused. Warning, meteorological patterns suggest approaching storm season. Kravinx dismissed the warning with a gesture. Storms were the least of his concerns. He'd hunted in the plasma hurricanes of Centauri Prime. What harm could a little water and wind do? He selected his landing zone, a rocky outcropping 5 kilometers from the settlement's outer mining operations. As his ship descended under the cover of its stealth field, he noticed something odd. The mining operations seemed inefficient. Instead of using standard matter conversion beams, the humans were employing what appeared to be primitive mechanical drills and explosives. Fascinating, he muttered, adjusting his sensory implants. They're deliberately using outdated technology. Perhaps they can't afford better equipment. This conclusion made him feel even more confident about his hunt. The first sign that things weren't as simple as they appeared came during his initial reconnaissance. Kravinx had positioned himself on a ridge overlooking mining site B7, watching through his advanced optical enhancers as humans went about their work. Their protective gear seemed laughably basic, simple fabric and plastic composites rather than proper energy shielding. Then the accident happened. A drilling platform malfunctioned, sending a shower of sparks and debris into the air. Kravinx's sensors detected a dangerous buildup of volatile gases. Any reasonable species would have evacuated immediately. Instead, he watched in disbelief as 3 humans ran toward the failing equipment. What happened next defied everything he knew about primitive technology. One human, wearing what appeared to be nothing more than reinforced fabric gloves, reached into the sparking machinery. The second began rerouting power using exposed wires, barehanded. The third was actually containing the gas leak by using that emergency sealant in an aerosol can. The entire crisis was resolved in under 3 minutes. No casualties, no equipment loss, just another day at work. Kravinx felt his certainty waver for the first time. He'd never seen any species so casually handle what should have been a catastrophic failure. His neural implants were struggling to process the implications. But he wasn't about to abandon his hunt over one surprising incident. That night, he decided to make his first attempt at capturing a human. He selected his target, a solitary maintenance worker doing a night shift at one of the outer storage facilities. The human's only protection appeared to be a simple environment suit and what his scanners identified as a primitive projectile weapon. Everything went perfectly at first. His stealth field was operating at peak efficiency. His tranquilizer darts were calibrated for human physiology. He had 3 backup plans and an extraction route already mapped out. The human never even looked in his direction as Kravinx crept closer. Just a few more steps. That's when he stepped on what looked like a simple maintenance panel. The metal plate shifted slightly under his weight, and suddenly everything went wrong. Floodlights blazed to life, not just normal illumination, but sophisticated UV and infrared arrays that cut right through his stealth field. Sirens blared, and the human, the supposedly oblivious target, spun around with practiced precision and fired that primitive projectile weapon. The impact knocked Kravinx back despite his advanced armor. His neural implants screamed warnings about localized EMP effects from a projectile weapon. As he staggered, more humans emerged from concealed positions, wearing what his increasingly scrambled sensors now recognized as combat gear disguised as simple work clothes. Contact confirmed. The first human spoke into a communication device. Looks like the motion sensors were right. We've got ourselves an invisible visitor. Cravinx didn't wait to hear more. He activated his emergency teleport beacon, barely escaping as more of those supposedly primitive but devastatingly effective weapons opened fire. As his consciousness faded during emergency transport, one thought burned through his mind. Those weren't mining operations he'd been observing. They were military installations disguised as civilian infrastructure, and he'd just walked right into their trap. When he regained consciousness back on his ship, his neural implants had finished their analysis of the weapons used against him. They weren't simple projectiles at all, but rather sophisticated combinations of kinetic, electromagnetic, and chemical technologies, all packaged to look like basic firearms. Humans, he was beginning to realize, had elevated deception to an art form, and his hunt had only just begun. The prey becomes the hunter. From the relative safety of his cloaked ship, Cravinx watched the settlement's response to his failed hunting attempt. He expected panic, chaos, perhaps a full military mobilization. Instead, he observed something far more unsettling: methodical efficiency. The humans didn't rush. They didn't make grand announcements or evacuate civilians. Instead, they began a systematic sweep of the surrounding territory, using what appeared to be ordinary mining equipment. But Cravinx's sensors, still recovering from the EMP damage, detected something else entirely. Those survey vehicles were running complex quantum scans, and the geological probes they carried were actually sophisticated cynotech detectors. "Ship," Cravinx commanded, his mandibles clicking nervously. "Analyze their search pattern." The A's response chilled his primary heart. Search pattern indicates familiarity with standard Scarix hunting protocols. They are not searching randomly. They are predicting your most likely hiding locations based on known predatory behaviors. A memory surfaced. Verlac's warning about humans turning hunters into prey. He'd dismissed it as exaggeration. Now, watching them systematically eliminate his tactical options, he understood. His neural implants pinged an alert. 3 human aircraft were approaching his position, flying in a pattern that would expose his ship's heat signature despite its cloaking field. He needed to move, but the humans had already positioned their ground teams to cover the most obvious escape routes. "Clever," he muttered. "They're not just hunting me, they're hurting me." With no choice, Cravinx abandoned his ship, using his personal stealth field to slip away moments before the human teams converged on its location. His ship's eye would follow emergency protocols, jumping to a preset-safe location in deep space. Now he was truly alone on their world. As night fell, Cravinx found himself in an unprecedented situation. For the first time in his hunting career, he was the one being stalked. The humans had adapted with alarming speed, using thermal imaging to counter his stealth technology and setting up sonic disruption fields that played havoc with his enhanced senses. But what truly disturbed him was their psychological warfare. "Attention, unknown visitor," a calm voice echoed through the valley, broadcast in perfect galactic standard. "We know you're from the Scarix Empire. We've encountered your kind before. We also know you're operating alone. Typical behavior for an elite hunter." Cravinx froze. How much did they really know about his people? The voice continued, almost conversational in tone. "You should know that we're not angry. In fact, we're quite impressed with your infiltration attempt. Our security chief would like to discuss your stealth technology. Strictly professionally, of course." A laugh rippled through the human teams, audible even at this distance. They were enjoying this. However, the voice took on a sterner tone. "If you continue to resist, we'll be forced to take more aggressive action. Your choice, friend. We can do this the easy way, or we can do this the human way." The last phrase triggered another memory file in Cravinx's neural archive, a report he'd initially dismissed as propaganda. It detailed how humans had an unusual approach to conflict. They actually preferred giving their opponents a chance to surrender, not out of mercy, but because it was more efficient than fighting. But when forced to fight, his sensors detected movement. The humans were deploying something new. Small, autonomous drones, but unlike any he'd seen before. They moved erratically, following no logical pattern his combat algorithms could predict, and they were getting closer. Worse, they were herding him toward what his maps showed as a dead end, a sheer cliff face with nowhere to go, perfect for trapping prey. That's when Cravings realized his greatest error. He'd been so focused on studying human technology and tactics that he'd overlooked something fundamental. Humans were pursuit predators. Throughout their evolution, they hadn't relied on superior strength or speed, but rather on their ability to track, outblast, and outsmart their prey. And now they were using those same ancestral hunting strategies against him. The drones were nearly upon him. His stealth field flickered, power almost depleted. The cliff face loomed ahead. Behind him, he could hear the methodical advance of the human teams, their primitive equipment now revealed as sophisticated hunting gear specifically designed to counter species like his. Cravings, the galaxy's greatest hunter, faced a choice: surrender to his prey or learn firsthand why humans were classified as Death World predators. And the night was still young. Understanding the enemy, Cravings made his decision. With his stealth field failing and the human forces closing in, he did something no elite Scarix hunter had done in 10,000 years. He surrendered. A wise choice, said the same calm voice from before, now coming from a human female in what appeared to be standard mining supervisor gear. She approached without fear, though her team maintained their positions. "I'm Commander Sarah Chen, New Arcadia Security Force." What followed was the most enlightening and humbling experience of Cravings's long hunting career. Instead of being thrown into a primitive detention cell, he was escorted to what they called a debriefing room. It looked more like a casual meeting space, with comfortable furniture and what his sensors identified as genuine Centaurian coffee brewing in the corner. "You're probably wondering why we're being so cordial," Commander Chen said, pouring 2 cups of coffee. "The truth is, you're not the first hunter we've encountered, and you won't be the last. We've learned it's better to educate than eliminate." She activated a holographic display, technology that shouldn't have been available at their development level. It showed a timeline of human history, but not the simplified version in Cravings's database. "You see," Chen continued, "when we first reached the stars, we quickly realized something fascinating. Most spacefaring species evolved as apex predators, like your Scarix. They developed technology to become even more efficient hunters." She smiled, and Cravings felt his secondary heart skip a beat. It wasn't a predator's smile. It was something far more complex. "But humans, we evolved as persistence hunters. We weren't the strongest or fastest. Instead, we developed something far more valuable: adaptability. Every piece of technology you saw today, we developed it because at some point in our history, we were the prey species." The hologram shifted, showing scenes that made Cravings's neural implants struggle to process. Humans hunting massive creatures by simply following them until they collapsed from exhaustion. Primitive humans using simple tools to take down animals many times their size. Early human settlements surviving against overwhelming odds. That mining equipment you observed, dual-purpose technology. We learned early that the best way to survive is to ensure every tool can serve multiple functions. Those primitive drills, they can bore through battleship armor. The environmental suits, designed to withstand everything from vacuum to plasma discharge. Cravings's mandibles clicked in understanding. The civilian infrastructure is actually military-grade equipment disguised as civilian tech, Chen finished, because we learned long ago that looking harmless is often better than looking threatening. Predators tend to overlook prey they don't consider challenging. She pulled up another display, this one showing various alien species, including several Cravings recognized as legendary hunters. Each entry included detailed tactical analyses and countermeasures. Every time someone comes hunting humans, we learn. We adapt. We improve. That EMP round that disrupted your stealth field, developed after our first encounter with a Drinix hunting party. Those erratic drones, programmed using patterns we observed in your species' natural predators. Cravinx felt something he hadn't experienced since his first hunt: awe. Humans hadn't just prepared for alien hunters, they'd turned their entire history of being prey into a devastating advantage. But here's what really sets humans apart. Chen continued, her expression growing serious. We remember what it was like to be prey. It taught us empathy, cooperation, and innovation. That's why we're having this conversation instead of mounting your head on a wall. She leaned forward, and for the first time, Cravinx saw what made humans truly dangerous. It wasn't their weapons or their tactics. It was their ability to shift seamlessly between predator and prey, between warrior and diplomat, between appearing primitive and wielding devastating technology. So, Chen concluded, would you like to know what happens next? A new perspective. One standard galactic year later, the Hunter's Rest was packed to capacity. Word had spread that Cravinx, the legendary hunter who'd survived an encounter with humans, was going to speak. The crowd included not just hunters, but diplomats, merchants, and even a few humans, a sight that would have been unthinkable a year ago. Cravinx stood before them, his once trophy-laden vest now bearing only a single emblem, a stylized Earth symbol marking him as an official liaison between the Scarix Empire and humanity. You're probably expecting a tale of how I narrowly escaped the humans' clutches, he began, his voice carrying clearly through the silent room. But I'm here to tell you something far more important: why I chose to stop hunting entirely. He activated a holographic display, showing the aftermath of his surrender on New Arcadia. But instead of imprisonment or humiliation, it showed something unexpected: humans teaching him about their culture, their history, their way of thinking. Commander Chen gave me a choice that day, Cravinx continued. I could return home with a warning, or I could stay and learn. I chose to learn, and what I discovered changed everything I thought I knew about strength and superiority. The hologram shifted to show scenes from his 6-month stay on New Arcadia, humans teaching him their mining techniques, which he now knew were far more advanced than they appeared. Training sessions where they showed him how they developed countermeasures for every known hunting species in the galaxy. But most importantly, scenes of everyday human life. We apex predator species evolved to be the strongest, the fastest, the most lethal, he explained. But humans, they evolved to be the most adaptable. Every time they faced extinction, they didn't just survive, they found a way to thrive. He showed footage of human children playing with clearly alien toys, human adults working alongside alien species in their primitive minds, and human scientists reverse engineering and improving technology from failed hunting attempts. But here's what truly sets them apart, Cravinx said, his mandibles clicking with emphasis. They understand something we never could: the strength of being underestimated. While we proudly displayed our power, they built their defenses in plain sight, disguised as civilian infrastructure. While we competed to be the greatest hunters, they were quietly becoming the most dangerous prey species in the galaxy. The room was dead silent now, every being present hanging on his words. Do you know what happened after I surrendered? They offered me a job. A ripple of surprise ran through the crowd. Said my hunting expertise could help them improve their defenses, and in return, they taught me something invaluable. There's more honor in protecting than in hunting. He deactivated the hologram and surveyed the room. I stand before you not as a failed hunter, but as someone who's seen the future. Humanity isn't just another species to hunt or avoid. They're a force that will change the galaxy. They've already begun sharing their adaptive technology with other species, teaching others how to defend themselves. Cravinx touched the Earth emblem on his vest. The age of the great hunters is ending. Not because we were defeated in combat, but because humans showed us a better way. They proved that true strength isn't about being the perfect predator. It's about being able to adapt, to change, to grow. He raised his drink in a toast. To humanity, the species that taught the galaxy's greatest predator how to evolve. As the crowd processed his words, a human figure stepped forward. Commander Chen herself. She nodded to Cravinx and addressed the gathered beings. "We're establishing a new galactic defense initiative," she announced. "A program where former hunters can use their skills to protect developing species instead of hunting them. Cravinx here is our first graduate." The room erupted in discussion. Some hunters looked thoughtful, others uncomfortable, but all knew they were witnessing a fundamental shift in the galactic order. In the years that followed, hunting intelligent species became increasingly rare. The Galactic Defense Initiative grew, with more hunters choosing to become protectors. And Cravinx, once known as the galaxy's greatest hunter, found a new kind of pride in being remembered as the one who helped bridge the gap between predator and prey. The humans had won without firing a shot, by simply showing there was a better way. And that, perhaps, was their greatest weapon of all.